extremism, an analysis. And we have Dr. Mustafa Ali, Momon Zhao, and Hassan Khanenje, who are the editors of this particular book. This is volume 1 and volume 2 as well.
This is volume 2, Debarl,
all right.
of the book.
Maybe we can zoom in and we see also what some of our guests they normally do as far as, you know, educating people about fighting terrorism is all about. Maybe you can talk to us as we try and pan out the cameras for them to see.
Debarl, these are 2 books, and they're about 20 chapters written by foremost scholars in the area of violent extremism and terrorism from around the world. Book 1 is on analysis, and the second book is on policy and practice. Basically, it talks about all the issues around violent extremism and terrorism, where we have gone wrong in the fight against terrorism, and where we are succeeding, and where others have succeeded, and where we can learn from. That's all contained in the 2 book volumes on analysis and policy and practice on the changing dynamics of terrorism and violent extremism.
Right. Fantastic. A rich repository of knowledge there. Also, you can grab a copy of this to just get to see what they have in mind as far as policy and practice is concerned, and the changing dynamics of terrorism and violent extremism as well. So we have a lot lined up for you today, and also Ambassador Erastus Muncha will be telling us more about the new role of Raila Odinga, right? You have been the deputy chair of the AU. So people were saying, where is this infrastructure really fitting into, of course, that particular role? Is it there in the first place? AU, do you have enough resources? That will just be a snippet of what we'll be discussing, not really looking deeply into it. But as far as security is concerned, what will be the highlight of that as well?
Okay, good.
Right, Dr. Wirunga. Yes. Good to see you. How are you?
Very well.
Right. The front page of a Daily Nation has a very interesting story today.
Yes.
Of course, I know you were the captain, and you can just see that the front page of a Daily Nation, gone 4,000-acre bullet factory land.
Yes.
Are we talking about this is the ordinance?
Yes, the one in Eldoret.
The one in Eldoret.
Yes.
4,000 acres of land gone missing. It's a huge story.
Yes. This is just one of them.
What do you mean this is just one of them?
There are so many.
You have so many infos that...
So many have been stolen. But scrupulous Kenyans. I know we have one in Kabete, we have issues with it. Karen, we have issues with it. In Bakassi, we had issues. The usual land grabbers. We had one in Bakassi, in Mariakani.
Yes.
One in Lamu. One in Nyali.
Yes.
All these have been grabbed. I think what the military is now doing is trying to repossess back their land. And using fake papers, just the same like these ones.
Yes.
I think this is just the beginning. But the Kenyans have really messed around with military land. Yeah.
All right. Of course, that is the issue of corruption that
it's
permeating everywhere. It's not really just, you know, maybe in the private sector, in government, we know, it's also in the military. We can see that is pervading as well. So last week, I think we were discussing about the choppers as well.
Yes.
So this is turning out to be also land which the clammy fingers of greedy Kenyans, some greedy Kenyans also, right, is reaching also to military as well. There is, today is actually 89 days since one of our panelists, Peter Biar Ajak, disappeared. And so far he's not been arraigned in court. And we're wondering what is really happening. And we know that, yes, there was information about the breakout from the prison Blue House. And we know Peter Biar Ajak, we have no information if he was really involved in this. But also that has brought another dimension and dynamics to the whole saga right now, that I understand the family members also, relatives, or any person cannot reach out, these prisoners as well, as far as this is concerned. And I think we've been, as panelists and fellow, you know, colleagues, I should say, having this conversation about security of Peter Biar Ajak, not really been highlighting what is really happening and pushing this agenda for his release as well. 89 days. So next week, the 28th of October, that will be 3 months since Peter Biar Ajak was arraigned in court. And we just wonder, what should we focus on? What should we do as panelists? And I think this also will be a part of a conversation that we'll be discussing much later in the course of the program. And I know the East Africa Court of Justice is doing something as well. We highlighted something also on the East African as well. Amnesty International South Sudan, I spoke to some of the directors there, and also they're doing something to make sure that Peter Biar Ajak is released from prison. Peter Biar Ajak, for them that have no information about him, is one of the panelists here. He's a young South Sudanese, he's a young South Sudanese activist, I should say, who is pushing the agenda of reforms in South Sudan, and that has agitated the government of South Sudan, and that's why he's actually in prison today. So we will be discussing on that particular issue and a raft of other issues as well. Khashoggi's death, also that has really drawn a lot of flack across the world. So we'll give you also the latest development as far as that is concerned. But you saw the headline. We continue with what is in the dailies today. This is what is headlining the front page of the Daily Nation. And I can see there also Professor Naomi Damba is walking in. As he's walking in, let's just take a look at what is happening on the front page of the dailies today. The Daily Nation, gone 4,000-acre bullet factory land. Little-known farmers' society given title to huge military land in transaction described by Defense Ministry and local MP as fraudulent. Amid plans to subdivide the parcel and dish it out to squatters. That story continues on page 4 of the Daily Nation today. On top there, the flag reads investigation. Detectives seize papers and block subdivision of army property. We have a bit of background there. Mystery, defense which called in police to unravel how its property was dished out and by whom, warns that the security of the country is at risk because encroachment is giving outsiders access to military sites. 4,236 acres of land military gave for settlement of squatters on order of Moi in 2002. And that is the latest development. So what does it do to our security? As I mentioned, we have our analyst here who will focus on this as well to just tell us how vulnerable is the country as far as this parcels of land is concerned. Also, Kenya wins mines case. Farm fronted by Jacob Juma, and which through political connections and suspected greasing of palms had been gifted a special license to mineral deposits worth an estimated 6.24 trillion shillings, loses international case to have the licenses reinstated. That is another story on the front page of the Daily Nation on page 4 today. Also, aside the story that we do have here, Haji to rule on GAA media debt dispute. That is another story. Remember, he had actually raised a red flag regarding this. Public prosecution's chief will today decide whether ICT staff should be charged for failing to honor advertising contracts. And they're also owing media houses huge tidy sum of monies. And that story you can follow it at the back page of the Daily Nation today. CS demands probe into maize gangs. That is what we have also at the back page of the Daily Nation today. Agriculture Minister Mwangi Kiunjuri is banking on EACC to find out how farmers' money ended up with traders, and also cotton left in woman's abdomen. Mother of twins living in misery after C-section, and doctors are not in a hurry to end her severe pain. You can follow her story on page 9 of the Standard of the Daily Nation, I should say, today. Up next is the Standard, and this is what we have on the front page of the Standard. Uhuru strikes at the heart of maize cartels, it says, cracking the whip twice in public. The president has rebuked CS Kiunjuri, ordering him to take action or face consequences. Minister has asked DCI and EACC to probe 152 persons over questionable payments. This story continues on page 6 of the Standard this morning. Also, GSU commando now witnessing Joey case. This is all about the Kilimani killing. Highly trained officer, earlier suspected to be Joey's accomplice, to take the stand as state witness after it turned out he was not at crime scene. Also caught frees Marsabit MPs for sake of peace. Judge releases 2 legislators held overnight of alleged incitement to violence so they can help in ongoing peace initiatives. That is a story that you want to follow on page 8 of the Standard this morning. The Star is up next. Bill proposes to pay whistleblowers 10%. Those who report corruption will be rewarded with portion of the recovered loot. That is what it says. And this story is tucked away on page 4 of The Star this morning. Attorney General awaits public input before sending bill to Parliament. It's all about a crackdown. And will also this move the needle a jot, I should say, as far as maybe recovering this looted cash is concerned? And you have all the gritty details on page 4 of The Star. Also, Sonko U-turn as City Hall to hike parking fees. Backtracking on his campaign pledges, Nairobi Governor Mike Sonko is set to increase parking fees in the city centre from 300 to 400 shillings. This is barely actually 1 year or two since this was hiked. And I think this is going to really draw a lot of flack from motorists who will see this morning. So from 300 shillings, what you're paying right now, to 400 shillings, is it justifiable? Are they also making sure that they're plugging all the holes, as you say, as far as this revenue collection is concerned from the parking fees? We have not seen any difference so far. But you can follow this story on page 7 of The Star this morning. There is a standalone picture on the front page of The Star. Kalonzo wishes KCP candidate success. Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka presents a card to Wendy Waeni at Daima Primary School in Huruma, Nairobi yesterday. And of course, you can see her smiley face. We wish her success. This is what is on the front page of The Star this morning. Also, owner of Sarova Hotels spent last moments in Temple. And you can follow that story of the Vora family on page 3 of The Star. Mystery. Body parts believed to be Khashoggi's found in Envoy's well. Body parts believed to be Khashoggi's found in Envoy's well. This is on the international news, page 16 in The Star. And of course, this is Jamal Khashoggi, the journalist who was abducted and killed at the Saudi Arabia consulate. And of course, we'll be discussing this also with the panelists much later in the course of the program. Also, under pressure in battle, Kinjuri says he won't quit over May's scandal. This story continues on page 2 of The Star this morning. Let's see what we have on the front page of the People Daily. And this is your splash today. PS MP face arrest over media cash. Duo among 24 state officials ensnared in Directorate of Criminal Investigations dragnet over misappropriation and rerouting of 2.8 billion shillings to accounts of shadowy firms of government advertising agencies in brazen fraud that has left mainstream media houses in financial dire straits. And this story continues on page 5 of the People Daily. PS MPs face arrest over media cash, and as I mentioned, close to 1 billion shillings. I know some farms, the government owes some farms, and this is what the story is all about. You can read all that in the People Daily as well. Desperation as patients endure painful long wait for intensive care beds. The country has 100 ICUs wards, which are not only understaffed but serve 48 million Kenyans. This story continues on page 6 and 8 of the People Daily. I'm victim of others' sins, says Kinjuri. CS says May's scam happened before his appointment. All right, this is now Blemstorm happening, passing the buck. And you can follow the story on page 17 of the People Daily this morning. Let's see what Taifa Leo holds for us. And this is your splash. Nyumba ya Jubilee ya Yumba, it says, wabunge kutoka eneo la kati na Nairobi wakosoa wenzao Rift Valley kwa kumdhalilisha rais na kumsawiri kama asiye na mamlaka. That story continues on page 2 of Taifa Leo this morning. The Business Daily is holding this splash for you. How Canadian miner lost 250 billion shillings Kwale permits. A Canadian company illegally acquired lucrative mining licenses for Kwale County sites, leading to dismissal of its 250 billion claim against the Kenyan government. You can follow this story on page 4 of the Business Daily. Also, 3.2 million Kenyans to get free health care coverage is another story you want to follow on page 4 of the Business Daily this morning. State House steps into KQ row with staff. State House yesterday waded into the controversy surrounding the inaugural Kenya Airways direct flight to the US with a demand the airline's management swiftly resolves any outstanding issues with its employees to ensure success of the October 28 maiden flight. You can follow the story also inside the Business Daily as well. And there is a standalone picture here, Education Week, and we can see Ugandan First Lady and Education Minister Janet Museveni with Education Secretary Amina Mohammed when they arrived at the Kenyatta International Convention Center yesterday to officially open the 6th African Higher Education Week. And that story also, you have it inside the Business Daily as well. Let's look at the ticker. Counties renew push for control of foreign TA states. You can follow that on page 6. Also on the digit 36%. That is the logging ban has triggered in, that is the increase the logging ban has triggered in timber prices in the past year. That story on page 19. Also, Kenya, Africa's third most attractive financial market. Kenya is ranked third most attractive financial market in Africa after South Africa and Botswana, buoyed by stronger policies and a host of newly launched products. This is according to a survey, and that story continues on page 12 and 13 of the Business Daily. Shilling hits 101 to the greenback, right? All right, this greenback, of course, that's a typo. The greenback, the shilling is against the dollar in the past week to, on average, it says two on average that crossed the 101 levels as demand from importers and ample liquidity in the market balances out inflows from the diaspora. And that story is continuing on page 19 of the Business Daily this morning. Let's see what we have also across the border. We go to Tanzania. Rolls reversed in closely contested Standard 7 exam. 7 of last year's top 10 schools have failed to make the grade this year in an examination that was marred by cheating in some areas. This story continues on page 3 of the Citizen. And also you have the 10 best performing candidates. The names are splashed here on the front page of the Citizen if you're waking up in Tanzania. And also 10 best performing schools as well, led by Raskazon, that is from Tanga. We gave them a total of 38 tests before they sat the examination. That is what Machibwa, one of the head teachers, is saying. And also no end to Acacia Wars. A CEO is remanded. Acacia Mining was thrown deeper into turmoil yesterday when its managing director for Tanzania, Mr. Asa Mwaipopo, was remanded after denying criminal charges involving billions of shillings. That is a story that you want to follow. Also, JPM, that is John Pombe Magufuli, doing a good job, says retired President Kikwete. And you can see them here, President John Magufuli with retired President Jakaya Kikwete after holding talks at State House, Dar es Salaam yesterday. A State House statement said Dr. Kikwete commended President Magufuli's achievements and asked him to maintain the tempo. You can follow that story also inside the Citizen. Farmers refuse to sell cashews over low prices. That is another story on page 2 of the Citizen. Also, Mwananchi, ushindani mkubwa matokeo. That is the splash. Matokeo Dar es Salaam or darasa la saba. That is the story that you want to follow. Ushindani mkubwa matokeo darasa la saba. That is on the front page of Mwananchi in Tanzania. In Uganda, Daily Monitor is holding this particular splash for you. Army quiz kwa Yowa. Army quiz kwa Woya over ADF rebel links. Also asked about stoning of Museveni convoy on torture. Security forces above the law. That is another attendant question there on the front page of the Daily Monitor in Uganda. The stories, you have them on page 4 and 5 of the Daily Monitor. Also, we can see here, Museveni opening fertilizer factory. It's a standalone picture there. President Museveni with her here and other officials tour the Sukulu fertilizer factory in Osukuru, Tororo district yesterday. Mr. Museveni said the factory will save the country from importing fertilizers. That story continues on page 2 of the Daily Monitor in Uganda. House probe into Bank of Uganda starts today is another story on page 7 of the Daily Monitor. Also, Khashoggi killed in savage way. This is also a sidebar story there. The killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi was planned days in advance. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan told MPs from his ruling party yesterday. Also, you can follow the rest of the stories on page 8 about a girl who fought for women's rights, signs out, and also regional extra mudslide victims return to villages. That story continues on page 10 of the Daily Monitor in Uganda. Let's see what we have also on the front page of the East African this week. But before I head there, I'll be remiss if I don't show you what we have in Rwanda. And this is your splash today if you're waking up in Rwanda. Government projects $800 million in minerals or mineral revenues. Government projects $800 million in mineral revenues. And it says Rwanda is projecting a sharp growth in its mineral export earnings in the current fiscal year on account of diversification, value addition, and stability in international prices. That story continues on page 5 of the New Times. You can see a related picture there. Miners leave a tunnel at Rutongo Mines in Rulindo district. It's a file picture. Also, RALC to publish book on values and customs. That story on page 2 of the New Times. And Pan-African MPs pledge to support AfCFTA ratification. That story continues on page 8 of the New Times. Remember, only Kenya and Malawi had actually ratified this particular, of course, pledge. So they'll be pushing the agenda, and this story continues on page 8 of the New Times. If you're waking up in Rwanda, the East African this week, cheap gas project vanishes into thin air due to corruption. Switched off the plan will have seen millions of households receive subsidized cylinders at $20. Kenya's grand plan to provide poor households with cheap cooking gas has collapsed due to allegations of corruption, lack of funds, and supply of defective cylinders that pose safety risks to users. This story tucked away on page 2, on page 4, I should say, of East African, where it is well fleshed out for you. Also, smart bridge over the River Nile. It serves as a second gateway to the rest of Uganda, Eastern Congo, South Sudan, Rwanda, Burundi, and the north of Tanzania. Food report, you have it on page 5 of the East African. Infrastructure icon rises at Jinja. Also, new faces in Kagame's bold reshuffle. In December 2017, when the Rwanda Patriotic Front was celebrating its 30th birthday, President Paul Kagame, should say, urged the country's youth to take up leadership positions to allow a transition from one generation to another, pointing out that he wouldn't mind being replaced by a younger leader. We have that story on page 7 of the East African. Let's continue to see what also we have internationally as far as international press is concerned. We can begin with the Washington Post. I should say, this is the latest. Video points to Saudi body double. That is all the story about Khashoggi, apparent attempt to cover up killing. Man seems to be wearing clothes of slain journalist. Surveillance video recorded by Turkish law enforcement appears to confirm reports that Saudi agents used a body double as part of an attempted cover-up after the killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. The video, obtained and broadcast by CNN on Monday, purportedly shows a Saudi agents walking out of the consulate wearing Khashoggi's clothes as well as spectacles and a fake beard in an apparent attempt to disguise himself as a slain Saudi journalist. Crown Prince has silenced dissent since taking reins is another story that you want to follow also on the front page of the Washington Post. That is what we have on the front page of the Washington Post. Let's see what we have on the front page of the Economist, the latest that you have right now. China versus America, a dangerous rivalry. This is how it looks, the latest. Weakness at the heart of Europe, the Saudi sand trap. Progress in America's prisons. Will quantum break the internet? That is another question on the front page of The Economist this week. Also, we do have the US Today, if you're there. And this is how it looks. Global outrage mounts over killing. This is all about also Jamal Khashoggi. Rights group Saudi have repeatedly lied. Also on the road again, Trump is on a record-breaking pace of midterm campaigning as he tries to ward off a Democratic takeover of Congress. That's how the US Today is looking. This is the latest edition as far as time is concerned. Also taking cognizance of that, we have as well a copy of the Fortune magazine this month. If you haven't grabbed a copy, this is how it looks. The 50 most powerful women, 21st edition Top Gun. America's military machine is being built by women. How the CEO became the defense industry commander. You can follow that story also in the latest of the Fortune magazine as well. And Financial Times, the latest, Rome defies Brussels with refusal to pare back spending. Italy on collision course over budget fines looms in challenge to fiscal rules. That is what we have on the front page of the Financial Times. And also, talking it up, Chinese talks surge after encouragement from Beijing as well. Lastly, let's just take a keen look on what we do have on the editorial pages, but she'll show you that much later. And this is what we have on the editorial pages, but that is a copy also of the Foreign Affairs. If you haven't grabbed a copy for yourself, just want to show you what we do have. This is what Stano has drawn for us. All right, back to black with my, I thought it's acting up on me. And we can see there, this is all about VIP case stalling as files vanishes. You know about the KPLC story. This is what Stano has drawn for you. And we have as well this editorial cartoon from Gado. And remember the disappearance of Mo Dewji. We are questioning suspects in connection to Mo Dewji's abduction. And you can see the suspects, the media, the critics, and the opposition. This is what Gado has drawn for us this morning. And lastly, let's see what also we do have inside the Star. And this is what Victor has drawn for us today. Elephant. What elephant in the room? And of course, the elephant is the truth. This is all the story about Khashoggi's killing and MBS. This is the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salam. We shall be discussing this with the panelists in our security talks this morning. But for now, I should say, let's swing for the fences by looking at the highlights. Former Secretary Beatrice Meso among officials in the dock after evidentiary documents go missing. Trump calls Saudi cover-up of Khashoggi death a total fiasco. And Dutch King saddened by British decision to leave EU. Now, there was gun drama at the Kisumu County Assembly after a sergeant at arms shot at a section of MCAs who had accosted him following a disagreement. The angry MCAs had confronted the sergeant at arms known as George Amayo, accusing him of intimidating them with the police. Amayo is alleged to have telephoned the police and reported that the MCAs were planning to cause chaos at the assembly after he withdrew the mess from the chambers, a move that did not go down well with the members. The Speaker of the Assembly, Onyango Olo, had just adjourned the House moments before the fracas broke out. Police later moved and arrested Amayo before disarming him.
That is wrong! That is wrong! Yes, live bullet. Eh? Why? And you are not fighting. Eh? This is the live bullet.
We are saying that we must improve the quality of the people who go to represent people in the county assembly.
And Agriculture Cabinet Secretary Mwangi Kiunjuri has now accused the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission and the Directorate of Criminal Investigations of delaying investigations into the 9.4 billion shillings maize scandal. Kiunjuri says that while a number of farmers have received their payments, some are still waiting for the completion of investigations into the scandal.
We have complied with this directive. As you all know, I have been directed by the President, who is disappointed, to take the necessary action. I am equally frustrated and disappointed by the manner and pace in which this matter has proceeded. I therefore urge, I wish I can direct them, EACC and DCIO to expedite this process in compliance with the President's directive so that the matter can be unruffled.
And former Kenya Power Secretary Beatrice Meso and two others were presented in court over the loss of crucial documents in the faulty transformers case, which is about the loss of 408 million shillings. The disappearance of the documents, which are said to have been in Kenya Power's custody, caused the case to stall. On Monday, the court allowed the case against former Kenya Power officials, among them former Managing Director Ben Chumo and his successor Ken Terus, to be adjourned to give the prosecutor time to probe and find the missing documents. The court was told that an original document with details of procurement of faulty transformers was missing and only photocopies were available. State Counsel Alexander Muteti told the court his case against the officials could not go on since he planned to rely on the original Energy Regulatory Commission report on faulty transformers, which is a missing document. It is said to contain details linking the accused to the case.
We are therefore requesting that the respondents be in police custody until these investigations are complete. It's for that reason we are requesting that the plea be deferred until after 7 days.
Corruption case number 26 of 2018. In that case, the accused persons are out on bond, a personal bond of 3 million and cash bail of 1 million.
Now, members of Parliament Chachu Ganya from North Hor and Ali Raso from Saku got a reprieve after the court declined a DCI application to detain them for 21 days. The two MPs were arrested over the Burana and Gabra inter-clan clashes, which left 14 dead and dozens displaced from their homes in Marsabit County. The legislators were accused of incitement to violence and funding the raids.
North Hor MP Chachu Ganya and his Saku counterpart Dido Ali Raso today appeared before Nairobi Senior Principal Magistrate Kennedy Cheriot after spending the night at Kileleshwa Police Station following the arrest on Monday. The two MPs were charged with inciting violence in Marsabit County that led to deaths of 14 people. Chachu and Raso denied the charges and were released on a cash bail of 250,000 shillings or 1 million shillings bond. The court also declined the prosecution's request to detain them for 21 days for police to complete investigations on Marsabit clashes. Magistrate Kennedy Cheriot says he freed the two for the sake of reconciliation efforts among the warring communities in Marsabit. The court further agreed with the defense team's position that Chachu and Raso had already begun reconciliation plans to end the violence in Marsabit. The MPs were directed to make themselves available to the investigating officers at DCI headquarters as and when required. Meanwhile, Wiper Democratic Movement leader Kalonzo Musyoka said the clashes in Marsabit County present a very risky atmosphere for KCSE and KCP candidates who intend to sit for the exams. He was speaking at Daima Primary School in Huruma, Mathare constituency, where he presented 8 primary schools with success cards.
As our children sit for their national examinations, it is important that the whole country be at peace with itself.
According to the Kenya Red Cross Society, more than 665 households have been displaced following the conflict. Hundreds of people have also fled their homes in the affected areas, with 16 schools in villages such as Shur, Orenderi, Kupigalo and Jaldesa being closed. Rozongwei, NTV.
Baringo County Governor Stanley Kiptis has condemned the murder of 4 people on Sunday in a bandit attack at Amayan in Kapedo. Kiptis says he's ready to work with leaders from neighboring counties to ensure security is enhanced in the area. 2 people were taken to Baringo Referral Hospital following the ambush. The attack paralyzed transport on the Kapedo-Chemolingot Road. There have been perennial fights in Amayan, which is at the border of Turkana and Baringo counties.
We also wish to call upon the chiefs, the assistant chiefs, and all the security personnel to ensure that they actually upscale their surveillance. Surveillance is necessary so as actually to prevent such kinds of heinous acts from people who are only out to cause mayhem.
Women in Mandera County are pleading for more inclusion and representations into the fight against violent extremism in the region. They say that cultural and religious misconceptions have sidelined them from playing an active role against militant groups such as the Al-Shabaab that have claimed dozens of innocent civilians.
The highlight of the two-day stakeholders meeting here in Mandera town was a declaration of a 7-point resolution led by the Mandera County Governor Ali Roba, which aims at preventing or rather curbing violent extremism.
We resolve to adopt an inclusive approach that brings on board multi-agencies and non-state actors in preventing and addressing violent extremism. We resolve to aggressively sensitize the public on the effects of violent extremism and radicalization on our societies.
Tuko na action plan ya kupambana na itikadi potofu, na pia tuko na County Integrated Development Plan. Hizi plan zote mbili zitatumika ili kuimarisha hali ya ajira ya vijana na kuwezesha vijana wapate riziki ya kila siku.
Women and youth in this particular county are calling for more representation and inclusion in order to be part of the initiative.
The pain of a mother losing her son through an attack or losing her son through radicalization, it's really tough. So if a mother talks emotionally to her son, so big percentage she might change his narrative.
Mothers, we are majorly affected because it is our daughters and our sons who are involved in these issues, because terrorists, they normally target women and youths. And if a child goes to Somalia or wherever they normally go and involves himself in these issues, it is the mother who's normally affected emotionally, psychologically, and mothers go through a lot of things. It's only that we don't go there and listen to their stories. I think they will have a big stories than even these men who have been talking here.
The residents hope that what was discussed and contributed upon during the two-day stakeholders meeting will go a long way towards achieving long-lasting peace in this particular region. Seth Olale, NTV, Mandera County.
You're watching Standing on Guard, where we keep an eye on the enemy, of course, talking matters security today. Earlier on, I'd introduced my panelists, but if you're joining us this morning, we can actually also do that favor for you. We have Professor Naomi Damba, who is the Vice Chancellor of KCA University, also is an expert on foreign policy and defense. We have with us also Ambassador Erastus Moincha, who is the former Deputy Chair of the African Union, also is the Chair of Trademark East Africa. We do have with us as well Dr. Mustafa Yusuf Ali, who is an expert on conflict resolution and also national security matters. And we have Captain Werunga Simiyu with us as well, who is the CEO of African Institute for Security and Strategic Studies. Good morning, gentlemen, once again.
Good morning.
Right. That particular story by Seth Olale, and we've seen this spate of clashes happening in the recent past for the past 2 months. Over 10 people have died because of clashes in this country. Of course, that from Mandera, we can allude that to Al-Shabaab, and women now, they're coming to the fore. They're saying we need now to debunk this misconception about women and how they're not really involved in the fight against terrorism as well. But Dr. Mustafa, you in that conference, just briefly, just give us some highlights about it, and then we move on to just discuss why there's a sudden flash of, and spate of violence and terrorism arising, especially in the northern frontier.
Yeah, Debarl, thank you very much. Good morning again. The Mandera Triangle, which borders Somalia and Ethiopia, is a wounded county. And I was there on Monday. What I saw, and in the discussions that we had with the governors in the frontier counties, is a very clear indication that Al-Shabaab has been more or less reigning supreme in that part of the world. While we have worked very hard and succeeded in addressing the Al-Shabaab menace in Nairobi, in Kwale, in Mombasa, parts of Lamu, it seems to me now the two areas, Boni Forest and the Mandera Triangle is a hard nut to crack. And the reason for that, Debarl, is that perhaps the strategy that has been used there does not really involve the people there, the community. This came out very clearly. Leader after leader talked about that. The people that Al-Shabaab had captured and even released talked about this in Mandera. We had one-on-one with them. And now the government has realized that it has really to work with the local communities. We have said again and again that communities beat terror. These people come in and hide amongst the community. Now, the relationship between the military and the local population is strained, because whenever an IED is set up, and Al-Shabaab is clever, they set up an IED on a road next to a village, because they know very well that the military will go in hard and punish the villagers there, who then will turn against the Kenyan government and the military and not give out information about the Al-Shabaab. So that's one of the issues that was discussed there, and the Kenya Army was there, and it clearly said and promised that they are going to work with the local population. So we are hoping that this is something that is going to be done. The other bit that is so critical, Debarl, is a kind of an unusual a recognition, not really recognition, but you know, people being terrorized into subservience. When Al-Shabaab comes in and they are there, they tell the local population, including the Ugas, the elders, and the sheikhs, that you don't touch them, they don't touch the local leaders. So they don't report them, and they will not hit at them, they will not punish them, they will not hit them. So in essence, what then the local leaders do is that they keep quiet, because their security is at risk. If this is something that is going to be addressed and it was recognized in this conference, then we will see Al-Shabaab on its back foot.
Thank you. Wirunga, you want to comment on the sudden spate of violence that, yes, has just erupted in the northern frontier and also other parts of the country as well?
You know, I was privileged to be retained by the Senate, and I did a research work on the problems of Mandera, Kapedo, and Laikipia.
Yes.
And Mandera's problem actually is tribal. Al-Shabaab are taking advantage of the tribal problems to infiltrate and cause havoc in Mandera. I had an opportunity to speak to the county governor. I sent my researchers to Mandera. They did all the things they needed to do, and actually I shared that report, a massive report, to the Senate Security and Foreign Relations Committee. So while we think Mandera is the most affected by these terrorism issues, when you look at the history of Mandera clashes, they actually open up to terror suspects to use the conflicts they have within the Gare, the Degodia, and the way the communities are framed, because you find when you go to Mandera, their king is actually in Ethiopia. The king of the biggest, I think, is the Gare. And when you look at the history of how the Gares went to Mandera, how they invited the other sub-clans, so it is a deep-rooted problem that does not necessarily reflect what we are seeing in Mandera. What Al-Shabaab are doing are just taking advantage of the conflicts within the sub-clans.
Yes.
And ensuring that even as they come and attack, you still have each sub-clan blaming everyone and everyone else, except looking at themselves. I had also a privilege to do one or two things with the MP for Mandera, Mandera East, I think. And we were discussing this issue, why these problems are persistent in Mandera. So yes, while I agree with what the conference is trying to do, I think, and with the due respect to Mustafa, what I recommended, and I said, unless we deeply look at the root causes of the clashes in Mandera, which start from Banisa, Ramu, Elwak. You see, Mandera, they just go to hit the installations. But the biggest problem actually are in Ramu, Banisa, and Mandera East, which is along the border. And unless we deal with the issue of clanism in Mandera, it's going to be very difficult for us to root out Al-Shabaab, because to me, they just take advantage of the differences among the locals. And number two, they have also been taking advantage of the way the military has been operating. They have not been very good to the local people,
yes,
and therefore denying them the ability for the local people to share with them the kind of information they are looking for. My take will be that now that we have a fully fledged border unit from the administration police,
yes,
and who I believe have been trained on matters of border security and control, hopefully from that, the new changes that we're going to see, then we are going to have sort of a permanent station for administration police, the border patrol unit, which I think has been augmented to 4,000 soldiers. And what I understand is that they are now going to be given fully fledged camps of about 300, 400 administration police officers to be augmented by the military, so that they are able to seriously take charge of land. You know, when you occupy land, you deny the enemy space to operate. And I think that, to me, is what needs to be done. And then, like he said, we can now look at the locals and see how they can work with these officers in a manner that they can synergize their efforts to take care of this problem. But as long as we have issues of clannism in Mandera, which is rampant, as opposed to Garissa and Wajir, Al-Shabaab will continue taking advantage of that until they take care of their own internal problems.
Right. We could also just highlight the involvement of politicians. In this case, what was happening in Marsabit, and also the court really declining to give, you know, the 21 days detention that the Director of Public Prosecution was seeking, or the DCI application was seeking. Could we just talk about it? Because it seems also politicians, they are stalking this, you know, on fomenting violence and hatred. And this has not just been the first case, I believe. I cannot just recall what was happening also in the Rift Valley recently as far as the clashes were concerned. Politicians also were involved. In Laikipia, we can remember, politicians were also involved. But detention, and then a slap on the wrist, maybe with some bails, will that really help?
Debarl, first of all, to agree with what my fellow panelists have said, who are after all gurus in this subject, and the two lessons to learn from what they have said, the security architecture, we need to look at it again to make sure that that architecture incorporates the local people, and that we address the really causes of these on and off clashes that we have. The second one, and this is also something that we have talked about on this fora, particularly when you look at what is happening in Somalia, Al-Shabaab is latent. And what we are doing, this high-profile kind of approach that we go and flash Al-Shabaab, they melt into society and remain there. And that brings them to the second aspect, because if the architecture is not right, the local people see the national security as them and us. You are always going to have that problem. And that is how the politicians exploit it. I think Noah has been talking about, if you look at the architecture of Israeli architecture, everybody is duty-bound to feel to be part of that security architecture. And if we go that route, really bring in our young people, bring in the local politicians, and I'm happy to see in this meeting that Mustafa went to attend, leading from the front were the governors, meaning that we are now recognizing that you cannot dispense with these elected officials on the ground. And so if we incorporate them, it will be easier for us then to have a seamless cooperation between our security forces and local politicians. Because politicians will always exploit any situation. And if they find the local population disenchanted, seeing the police as coming to oppress them, or security forces, they will always speak through the politician. The politician is a mouthpiece of what he sees as an opportunity.
Right, thank you. Professor Nomi Damba.
Bryce, from from global standpoint is Vietnam War failed because of understanding the fundamental war, understanding that you have to begin with people first, and you have to convince the people to be part of your effort. And therefore, the soft power is even more stronger than the hard power. We tried the brute force in Sicily. It did not work because the people we were fighting were the people who need to provide intelligent information so we can know where the enemies are. I've been saying for a while, and I'm glad, based on what Captain Werunga is saying this morning, that they're increasing border patrol, border force, and all that kind of stuff. Unless, Bryce, and I want to repeat this, unless we secure our border with Somalia, all the efforts we have taken in Somalia will be for nothing because infiltration will continue to happen. We will have to confront these people in the street of Nairobi, Mombasa, and everywhere. And therefore, one thing that Kenya need to concentrate on is the best national interest of this country, which is to secure our border permanently. I'm glad that there is whistleblower. Blowers will be rewarded in the case of corruption. Let's reward people who are talking about so-called leaders, who are fuming this kind of continuous war to continue. We move from ethnic groups to clanism and religion differences and all that kind of thing. We are all Kenyans.
Yes.
But let's secure this country all working together.
Right, thank you. Right, we want to take a short break, and of course also if you're not in the loop of what Professor Naomi Damba is talking about whistleblowers getting 10% of the corruption loot, if you report, this is what is on the front page of the Star this morning, and it says, if we may just pick it up so that we can see what it says before we take a short break, bill proposes to pay whistleblowers 10%. Attorney General awaits public input before sending bill to Parliament. Those who report corruption will be rewarded with portion of the recovered loot. So this can be a tidy sum of money for you, right? Running into billions. Yes, if you report that, then you can get 10% of those billions as well. And I think this also will be a good move in fighting corruption in this country with the whistleblowers. Also, we do know about the Witness Protection Act as well, on how that will be enforced. So let's see, or let's eagerly wait and see how this particular bill will pan out and how people also are going to report corruption as well. We want to take a short break right now. When we circle back, of course, we shall be looking at what is on the front page of the Daily Nation and a raft of other issues that are happening internationally, and also our story about our panelist here, Dr. Peter Biar Ajak, who's been missing, of course, for a while because he's actually in custody in South Sudan, and he's not been arraigned in court up to today. Today actually is the 89th day, so the 28th of this month. Those will be 3 months as well, and still no justice has been done as far as his release is concerned, or him being arraigned in court as far as charges is concerned. We shall give you more details of this and also tell you what is in the East African and what also some lawyers are doing to try and see the release of Dr. Peter Biar Ajak. Don't go away. Much more coming up on the other side of the break. watching Standing on Guard here on AM Live, where we keep an eye on the enemy. And of course, we are focusing on the matters security, taking a look at what is happening here in the country as far as security is concerned, the region, and also a panoramic view of what is happening internationally as far as security is concerned. Right now, we want to pick up a page in the East African where our conversation is concerned as far as one of our panelists is also concerned. This is Dr. Peter Biar Ajak. And it says, Lawyers Union 6 EACJ help to free Juba political prisoners. We can just read a bit of it. The release of political detainees was part of the September 12th deal. And it says that the Arusha-based Pan-African Lawyers Union has gone to the East African Court of Justice to force the South Sudan government to release political detainees. The release of political detainees was part of the September 12 peace agreement. We have Donald Dare, that is a Palu chief executive, has filed habeas corpus, a writ requiring a person under arrest to be brought before a judge at the EACJ for business and philanthropist Kabino Wall Agok, who has been detained without trial since April. Allies of Mr. Agok told the East African that they do not know his whereabouts since he led a prisoners' protest at the National Security Service premises, commonly known as the Blue House, on October the 7th. And I can just try and show you what it says there. It's a bit tiny for me, but you can see. Also, Amnesty International has also called for the release of a prominent South Sudanese academician and activist, Dr. Peter Biar Ajak, who was arrested on July the 28th at the Juba International Airport and is believed to be held at the Blue House. The government is accused of denying the detainees access to their families, lawyers and doctors. They're confined and given 1 meal per day. Since Mr. Ajak's arrest, the campaign Free Peter Biar has generated considerable support online, with 78,600 people signing a petition calling for his release. Mr. Ajak has been the leading voice of a civil society in South Sudan, calling for generational change as the only way for peace to come to South Sudan. Amnesty International says that it is believed that his arrest is linked to the youth forum that he intended to hold in a well. And so in the case filed by Palu at the ESCJ, Mr. Dare says that there are fears that Mr. Agok's family is in danger, and the lawyers' organization is invoking the court's powers to compel the South Sudan Attorney General to promptly produce him in the court. And this is just one of the many, of course, political prisoners that have still in custody in South Sudan. And remember also last week, there was a breakout, and so the harsh sort of measures have been put on the prisoners. That's why they cannot see their families, or even get access to their lawyers and doctors for medical, of course, care as well. And so this, as we mentioned, is the 89th day since Peter Biar Ajak was put in custody in South Sudan, and they have not been arraigned in court, him amongst many. And we wonder why. He has been vocal, as we've read from the East African, in regard to making sure that there is that generational change or transformational leadership in South Sudan, with, of course, that particular, under the rubric of generation exits. That is what was mainly the rallying call that Dr. Peter Biar Ajak is actually fighting for. Let's just put this to a panelist, and we've been mealy-mouthed also as panelist, and of course as a show. He has been one of us, and at some point we lost track of what is happening to Peter because of the scanty information as well. But what do you think right now should happen as far as this is concerned? 89 days in custody and no court arraignment. Right now you cannot see your family. 1 meal per day, no access to medication. Dr. Peter, Dr. Wirunga.
I think one, I don't understand then what was the essence of this peace treaty. Because I thought one of the things that was meant to be done was the release of all political prisoners.
Yes.
So that they start on a new slate. Now that we've not seen, and therefore we have to go back to our heads of states what business were they doing coming up with an agreement, peace agreement, when they cannot enforce it? Because you need to enforce what you have asked your colleagues to sign off.
Yes.
And therefore, Debarl, I don't understand, because in any situation, when you do what they did and people agree to start afresh, then any encumbrances that have been part and parcel of any of the two are supposed to be done with so that the country starts afresh. And in any case, you are put in place unless you become a security risk, which is very, very amorphous, unless your problem was being a security risk to the nation, but not a political thing or a political issue that probably the system at that time felt that you are becoming a political threat, then Peter Biar should be out. But number two, I think if I'm not wrong, I also know Peter Biar's family. I think the father is or was a lieutenant general. So it could be just an extension of the wars amongst the big people. I think I had a lengthy chat with him before he left. And I think his father is or was a general. So maybe that is one angle we don't understand. Could it be an extension of, if you can't deal with the father, deal with the children? So that is something that we also need to understand. But in totality, even with that kind of information, I think my problem is, what then was the essence of this peace agreement? Because a peace agreement is meant to allow the country to start afresh.
Yes. Okay. Let's hear from Dr. Mustafa.
Yeah, Debarl, Dr. Wirunga is right. One of the clauses of the most recent peace agreement that was signed between Riek Machar and Salva Kiir is very clear: release all political prisoners. And now that that has not happened, and we know for sure, very clearly, that Peter Biar Ajak is a prisoner because of his engagements, because of his ideas, which are very progressive. It means that the leadership in South Sudan are not really looking at the peace agreement and the truce in its entirety, and that is dangerous for South Sudan. It's very important that the leadership in Juba releases all the political prisoners to be a part and process of healing in South Sudan. It's very unlikely, it's highly unlikely that a person like Peter Biar Ajak would be a threat to the national security of South Sudan. He only has been using his mouth and ideas. He's been presenting ideas. You know, when he talked about the generational exit, I think this is something to be debated, and it should be debated right in Juba, not even just in this panel. We call on the government of South Sudan to release Peter Biar Ajak so that we can continue to debate and talk about these ideas that Peter Biar Ajak has been talking about in this panel and in many forums around the world. I think it's now up to call on the consulate or the embassy of South Sudan here in Nairobi if we can talk about these issues openly.
Right. And of course, if you not seen the website that really also is advocating for his release, this is change.org. And we have some also of the students from his, of course, alumni. Some of the students from Harvard University. They are putting this particular petition, as we read earlier, 78,768 have signed. And they were agitating for 150, or they were pushing for 150,000 people to sign this petition. And just to give a snippet of that information, Peter Biar Ajak was arrested in South Sudan on July the 28th. He's a youth advocate for peace and a friend and inspiration to many who know him around the world. He's currently being held without charge at the notorious South Sudanese prison known as the Blue House. His friends at universities, human rights institutions, media organizations, and other around the world are calling for his release. Peter's arrest comes amid a worrying trend in arbitrary detentions due to a crackdown on freedom of expression by South Sudanese government. Amnesty International reports numerous recent arrests without charges. This goes against South Sudan's constitution which states no one can be held without charge for more than 24 hours. Peter was one of the lost boys of South Sudan, displaced during the war. When he was young, he lived in refugee camps before being taken to the United States by humanitarian charities. Once in the U.S., he learned English and studied hard, securing a place at the LaSalle University, then completed a master's at Harvard before studying for PhD at Cambridge University in UK. His inspirational story was recognized when he became an Atlantic Council Millennium Fellow and Desmond Tutu Leadership Fellow. In June, Peter was awarded the Crans Montana Forum's New Leader for Tomorrow award by His Excellency Musa Traore, former president of Mali. Peter has always kept his focus on South Sudan and his hope for a peaceful future for his custody. He has worked in think tanks, his national government and institutions working for development and peace. And it can read on and on. You can actually head over to that particular website. This is change.org and see his story. If you've not or you're not familiar with his face, he is a panelist here on Wednesday on Standing on Guard when we discuss issues of security, not only in South Sudan, but also the entire world. A very rich repository of knowledge is as far as security is concerned. Let's just hear from Ambassador Rasas Mwencha. With this development so far, 3 months without custody, that is hard to bear, even for the family.
Yeah, Debarl, first of all, our hearts and prayers to Peter, but also to his family. I just can't imagine how those young children are feeling when they cannot even be able to get an explanation as to where their father is and what is happening. But also let's commend these efforts by Amnesty and the others that have gone to court, the East African Court, because South Sudan is seeking to be a member of the East African community and therefore must live with certain values. And let's hope that this will be carried through and through. I would also encourage them to go to the African Court of People and Human Rights. They have been known to give far-reaching rulings that can also, in a way, isolate South Sudan so that South Sudan can live with the norms that they purport to say in their constitution. Having said that, it's unbelievable that you sign a document whose very tenets espouse that you have a new start, but you fail to start. And we have said here before that many of us have always, we give unqualified support, to this peace agreement. But each passing day, I now realize how right we were in thinking and saying that this is going to be another false start, that South Sudan is far from really achieving its dream. And sadly, this is a nation that achieved independence, we'll call it its status in 2011, and many of those leaders were living out here. They were in Kenya, they were in Uganda, and one would have expected that they learned from their hosts best practices. But when you look at it, it's heart-rending that this is a very young nation that is gone astray the manner they have done.
Right. Professor Noami Damba.
Debarl, dear Congo has never been peaceful since Patrick Lumumba. The crime in that country is a stockpile of natural resources. The same case in South Sudan. We are aware of this video that was circulating where somebody is bathing in a pool full of dollars and they're riding Learjets. There is incredible small arms coming into the country from all sides. There is incredible pilferage of the country goods looted so that they can land in Australia, Kenya, and everywhere else. Given the fabric of the country right now, I do not anticipate a peaceful coexistence to come out clean and bring the people back together, focus on development. It's not going to happen tomorrow. So Ambassador Mwenje is right. We have to insist as East Africa community that if you are going to be part of us, then you have to follow the norm of a civilized country. IGAD need to continue demanding, AU need to continue demanding, and if you have to isolate these leaders, so be it.
All right.
Yeah, I think just to add on what Ambassador Mwenche said, I think, Ambassador, it's not that the people have to go to court for South Sudan to adhere. The protocols of joining East African community is very clear. Yes. One of the things is that you must have a stable country, your governance system must be good, you must have none of what we are seeing in South Sudan. Yes, yeah. And therefore, I'm baffled how our leaders could even be considering South Sudan joining the East African community when the protocols for joining East African community are very clear.
Yes.
Number two, a peace treaty has a guarantor. Who is the guarantor of this recent peace treaty for South Sudan? Because that is the person who is supposed to guarantee that that peace will be actualized. Who is the guarantor, Ambassador? Because
well, it was signed in,
yes.
In Khartoum.
Yes, because that is the person who is supposed to ensure.
It was signed in Khartoum, but if you look at the intention and process
yes.
initially, it was supposed actually to enjoin all the leaders.
Yes.
Even the process itself should have been in Khartoum, Kampala, and Nairobi,
yes.
so that you could have all the leaders jointly as guarantors.
Yes.
But of course, Khartoum stole the limelight and went ahead and concluded that agreement. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yes.
The agreement is signed, fault as it may be, but you are not even implementing it.
Now, but that is why.
Which means that
yes.
Sudan itself
yes.
should really look at it and say, where is this going?
And I think with this current one, to my understanding, although I have not gone through the real document, there are actually sections for punitive action if they don't implement what they have signed. Now, if we have African leaders who are allowing what Professor has said, fellows coming here with shoes of $10,000, swimming in dollars, and he's showing us how he's living in a presidential suite. And surely we know that kind of fellow. You know, you can see a person who has grown in wealth. I looked at that fellow and I didn't see him growing in wealth. No. So he must have acquired that kind of money through some dubious means. And then as a country, we know what is going on in South Sudan, and we allow those fellows first to appear on our national TV and show us how they are playing around with money. So I also blame our regional leaders. And I think, Ambassador, from AU, you understand this. Our regional interests is actually messing up. And number two, we don't think, we don't have a father figure, president who is respected in this region. You know, like the Moi days, he had his own issues in Kenya, but Moi was a respected leader around the region. And therefore, most of them will turn to him and say, this is what is happening in Somalia, what should we do? I think that is where we have a problem, that all our regional leaders do not have the capacity to ensure that what they sign and force the people of South Sudan to sign is implemented. And I can assure you, for as long as we have that weakness, South Sudan will continue being what it is.
Yeah, if we don't.
Yes.
Yeah. Is it part of East African community now?
No, it's planning to join.
Yeah, then even the little bit progress that has been made to become part of East African, everything should be suspended.
Yeah.
I think the East African community should call on Sudan, should write them a letter, suspend everything until they put their house in order and put in place mechanism, or first of all start by releasing the political prisoners, and then seeing to it that the latest peace agreement that the two signed, a peace agreement is not a piece of takataka paper, it's a solemn agreement, and they have to abide by it, Debarl. If they continue doing what they're doing, then why should we have any business dealing with them? The reason why Somalia was not even considered to be a part of East Africa is because it is in shambles, and people are not moving in any meaningful direction. Now, in fact, Somalia seems to be moving in a more meaningful direction than South Sudan. So what business do we have having South Sudan on the East African community? Nothing.
I think it is fully fledged part of the East African community right now. And even that's why Mr. Dare actually is going to the East African Court of Justice to seek the release of some of these political prisoners.
I think it has not been accepted yet.
Not yet.
Not fully.
No, I think we had this discussion and we said why. Maybe Mr. Mwenji can tell us.
There's a principle that they will become members of East African community.
Yes.
But they have not fulfilled all the conditions.
Yes.
For instance, if you look at the trade protocol and all the other things, they are not doing that because they are in the process.
But they applied.
Yes, so
and then they were given observer status.
Okay, it might be beyond my knowledge, but I remember we had this discussion and at some point, I don't know if it was this forum, and we asked, why do we have the South Sudan who have been accepted into the East African community and they've not, checked out the list as far as those regulations and requirements is concerned, right? And maybe the case will be again, why then will Mr. Dare have all that particular chicks right now to go to the East African Court of Justice if South Sudan is not really part of all fully fledged?
Yeah,
yes.
I'm reading it here from the East African community website. South Sudan is the newest member of the East African community.
Yes. Yeah.
Is also referred to as the youngest nation in Africa. I think they should be suspended today if possible.
Yeah. So I think from that point of view, so they are not awaiting. They are the newest member of East African community.
And we should not be babysitting South Sudan.
I think if we are taking a stand as African continent on the Congo issue, there will be settlement in Congo, and Congo will be a bread basket for the entire continent of Africa. The same thing with Sudan. And we should not accept this in the continent of Africa. And we should not be talking about AU organizing for development when this kind of thing is happening. Peter's crime is simple. He's calling for a rational thinking, a rational government, for coexistence of the people, for taking care of the poor. That should not be poor. That should not be refugees. That is Peter's crime. So this nonsense must not continue to be accepted in the international community.
All right. But again, just like what we are now saying, now that it's been confirmed. Actually, I've been arguing because I didn't expect it to join, because it cannot meet even a quarter of the conditions.
Yeah, that was actually the questions people were asking and raising. They do not really meet. How did they even manage to pass through the grid?
How are they accepted? You see, that's now what begs the question, and that's why we go back to the same leaders who accepted a country like South Sudan to join the East African community, floating all the protocols required to join, and now we are talking the same language with South Sudan. Surely.
Their national are enjoying the security. They're traveling all over.
And all the protocols and all the privileges of East African community, and they are still doing what they are doing in their own country. It is strange.
Maybe people are gaming from the system. Of course, looking at even the latest documentary by Alan Amo, The Profiteering. That is why maybe they had a seamless flowing, entry into the East African community, because there are people who are gaming the system and they're profiteering, from the instability in South Sudan, right? So what is the way forward as far as now the petition is concerned? Are we trying to push the envelope, all of us, to make sure that Peter Biar Ajak is released from prison?
Debarl, Peter and all political prisoners should not stay there one single day. No. If these people are serious about the development of South Sudan, if they're serious about independence, if they're serious about coexistence, these people ought to be released.
Yes.
So they're part of the development strategy.
All right. Okay, if you've not, I can see you are straining at the list. You say something before you move on.
I don't know whether we should classify Peter, and this is just, by the way, I don't know whether we should classify him as a political prisoner or prisoner of what? Conscience. There are those who are prisoners of conscience. He believes in this. He has not done anything politically wrong, but because he's so firm with what he thinks and believes in, the system feels this guy must be put aside for us to move. So is he a political prisoner or a prisoner of what? Conscience or conscience, whatever you call it. I think that's where the problem is.
Because so we should not classify him.
No, I don't think it's a. Yes, I don't think it's.
With other political prisoners that we're talking, Mr. Gok and the rest.
Yes.
Him is a different kettle of fish.
I think he's a prisoner of conscience.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the difference?
Because what Peter Biar stands for, and he speaks, because he's a chairperson of South Sudan Youth Movement. So he speaks for some people. And therefore, if the government of South Sudan wanted to deal with Peter Biar, they should have looked at him as a chairperson of a movement that is taking place in South Sudan. And therefore, he's not political per se.
In fact, he was not a politician.
Yes, he was not.
He's never been.
Yeah, he's never. And because politics has gained such a, it's become such a bad word. You know, someone once said that politics is the oldest profession in the world and is not different from the first. I think we should be calling Peter Biar Ajak as a prisoner of conscience.
Of conscience, yes.
And I think, Debarl, perhaps we should ask the Consul General, Ambassador of South Sudan in Nairobi. Let him come and let us talk about these issues here. Invite him.
The iron, Debarl, is if you look at the struggle, of the people of South Sudan, was to be able to enjoy certain freedoms, like freedom of beliefs. When they argued that Sharia law was universally applied, and that they wanted a nation that they would also be able to propagate their own beliefs. And Peter's only crime has been that he believes that there is a generational change. That is because of the impatience of the young people who have seen this dream of a new nation just vanish in the air. And so I want to agree very much that let's invite the ambassador here. Let him really come out and tell us what is really happening inside South Sudan.
All right, we'll make that attempt. Unless, Professor, you have something to say, we can move on.
What
please.
I want to say, Debarl, is these people fought to be independent for years. They were fighting Sudan.
Yes.
We isolated South Sudan, traumatized the people, did everything. And all of a sudden, the same Sudan become the independent arbitrator for a peaceful coexistence.
Yes.
Something is wrong.
Right, thank you.
Something is not quite right.
Something is not quite right. This is what Midambo is saying. But this is the website again. If you've not, or if you know Peter Biar Ajak and you've not really signed that petition, the number stands at 70,768 right now. And of course, that is a target over here. That is 150,000. And you have a snippet of what Peter Biar Ajak is all about, what he stands for here. You can sign the petition over here. Just go to www.change.org or .org, www.change.org, freedom for Peter Biar Ajak, right? So let's stand in support. And remember, the hashtag is free Peter Biar. The hashtag is free Peter Biar. Once again, this is the website, Freedom for Peter Biar Ajak. You can head over there and sign the petition. Right, let's move on and see what is happening also elsewhere as far as international news is concerned and security. President Donald Trump has said the killing of prominent journalist Jamal Khashoggi and subsequent cover-up by Saudi Arabia were a total fiasco. Trump spoke hours after Turkey's President Tayyip Erdogan dismissed Saudi's efforts to blame Khashoggi's death on rogue operatives. Erdogan urged Riyadh to search from top to bottom to uncover those behind Khashoggi's death in the Saudi consulate in Istanbul on October the 2nd, an incident that has sparked global outrage and strained relations between Riyadh and Washington. For Saudi Arabia's allies, the question will be whether they believe that Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who has painted himself as a reformer, has any culpability.
They talked about it, nothing.
side by story there. There's a video that points to Saudi body double. This is all in an attempt to cover up the whole saga from the Saudi consulate. A man seems to be wearing clothes of slain journalist, and it says surveillance video recorded by Turkish law enforcement appears to confirm reports that Saudi agents used a body double as part of an attempted cover-up after the killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. The video, obtained and broadcast by CNN on Monday, purportedly shows a Saudi agent walking out of the consulate wearing Khashoggi's clothes, as well as spectacle and a fake beard, in an apparent attempt to disguise himself as a slain Saudi journalist. The video was released as pressure intensified on Saudi officials to explain what happened to Khashoggi, a critic of the Saudi government who had been living in self-exile in Virginia and was in Istanbul to obtain documents for his pending marriage to his Turkish fiancée. After denying any knowledge of Khashoggi's death, the Saudi government reversed course on Saturday, saying he had accidentally been killed in the consulate after an altercation with a team sent to negotiate his return. But that account has been greeted with suspicion and derision by European leaders and many U.S. politicians. You can follow this story also inside the Washington Post as well. Crown Prince has silenced dissent since taking reins is also a story that you can read there by Kevin Sullivan. That is in the latest Washington Post. I just want to show you also that editorial cartoon that we have today in the Star. This is what Victor has drawn for us as well in regard to what we're discussing. Elephant, what elephant in the room? Is all about the truth, and this is what also has been aptly captured by Victor. Let's just go back to a panelist and just weigh in on this particular story, where it is headed right now as far as Jamal Khashoggi is concerned. Dr. Mustafa, let's begin with you on this. The story and, of course, the flip-flopping from the consulate as far as this matter is concerned. First of all, they're saying, oh, they have no whereabouts about what happened to Khashoggi, and then later coming to the fore and saying he was accidentally involved in a brawl, and that is how actually he died. But questions have arose of why we had also some people coming to a negotiating table of 15 people to discuss, because he was going there to actually seek documents. Why were we having negotiation and 15 members sitting on that particular table, one of them even coming with a bone saw?
Debarl, it's very clear that the murder of Khashoggi was planned, premeditated. 2 private planes left Riyadh, landed in Istanbul with the killers, and they went straight into, they knew that Khashoggi was going to go into the consulate, and they went in there with everything that they needed to kill and perhaps even dissolve the body of Khashoggi in acid. There are reports that now indicate that parts of his body were found in the garden of the Saudi Arabia Consul General in Istanbul. Now, the monstrosity of this act is something that has shocked the entire world, the journalists, the profession of, or rather the journalists around the world. The Khashoggi was killed for simply criticizing the ruling family, the royal family, and the Saudi government. This is unacceptable. It's even more unacceptable that people, starting with Trump, the president of the Republic, the president of the United States of America, actually flip-flopped in the beginning, and even sent Pompeo to Saudi Arabia, whether to enhance or work on a cover-up, which was not going to be possible. And other leaders, we are not hearing enough condemnation from Europe, from other leaders from around the world. These kind of things do happen, Debarl, and Khashoggi is not an isolated case. We have children being killed daily in Yemen by bombing from some countries in the Middle East. The way some leaders behave in the Middle East, Debarl, begs the question: what do they believe? Do they hold life dear? What do they think about the sanctity of life. And it's not just in Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Syria, Iraq. With all the groups that have come there, they're slaughtering innocent people. You know, no wonder God did send prophets largely. 99% of all the prophets were sent to the Arabs and Israelis. The way these people behave is terrible.
Right. Dr. Wirunga.
You know, I don't know whether it is true. You know, immediately after that, some pictures started circulating. I don't know whether you people got some very gory pictures for purported slain journalists. And if it is true, those pictures reflect what happened to the late journalist, then I'll want to imagine what kind of human being will do that, Debarl. You kill somebody, you skin his face, you cut this person in pieces. And why I'm not surprised with Saudi Arabia is because the Crown Prince has a record of doing extreme things. You realize what he did with Canada. Within a short time, everything went overboard, and it's like they were closing up with Canada. This man wanted to fight Qatar. If Turkey had not gone to Qatar and promised Qatar that they were sending in their military to support Qatar, this fellow will have attacked Qatar and will have occupied Qatar. We hear they are now trying to make it an island. So they really want to cut off, they want to dredge. You know, like the Panama Canal and the Suez Canal. So the Qatar just remains an island. So this is a man who has done things in a very short time that tells you the kind of fellow he is. You remember he put in his old cousins and whatever, and they paid 100 billion for him to release him. So he has done monstrous things in a very short time. And therefore, when I heard about this story coming from the same fellow, I was not surprised. But like what he's saying now, the way the world has reacted to this is only Turkey that has taken this thing very seriously. Yes. Although we know Turkey has its own political agenda and whatever, but it has taken this thing very seriously, and it's because of Turkey that we are where we are today on the information concerning these journalists. And don't forget, our girls are dying in the Middle East, being killed, being bludgeoned. So it is something that to me speaks about the way these people treat others, especially if they don't respect you. So to me, the only thing we expect, and hopefully, I've been watching Trump from time to time say this and flopping to this, but at least he has said the retribution will be good enough for them never to attempt this kind of thing again. France and Britain have said they are watching and they are going to, I mean, like he said, nothing, no country in the world is reacting the way we expect the world to react. So therefore, this gives you how that young man, we are told is 33, it tells you how, what kind of leadership that Crown Prince is giving to the people of Saudi Arabia. If he has only been there and the father is not even dead, and we see what is happening within a very short time, that tells you the kind of leadership that leader of Saudi Arabia is going to give to the people of Saudi Arabia. We know it's a rich country, but we know its influence is not as massive as a country like Israel that is very small and with a very small population. So our hope is that the bulwark that Turkey has put in place, the bulwark that we have in the Middle East, Israel, is that checkmating the kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Otherwise, I think they'll have messed the whole of the Middle East by the way this young ruler is behaving on his own people, which is very unfortunate. And we are happy that the media in the world has relentlessly been talking about this story for the world to see, to hear, and to ensure that hopefully such a thing never happens again.
Right. Erastus Mwancha.
Debarl, there is one aspect that I want to agree with Trump when he says that this was a murder that was a fiasco in its planning and its execution. And so many things that have gone wrong that are obvious. One of the things that, and just building on what my colleagues have said, of the 18 people who are said to have been involved in this murder, 2 of them are actually close allies of this crown prince. In fact, personal kind of bodyguards.
Yes.
And their presence in Istanbul the day before the murder and living in the hasty manner in which they left puts this matter squarely in the crown prince's doorsteps. But having said that, I think what we need to do is, what are we learning out of this story?
Yes.
It's the obvious double standards that have always been practiced by some superpowers. And here is the dilemma now of the US in this case. And I think Simeo has touched on quite a few of those. One, they already messed up their relationship with Qatar. Qatar was a very close ally of the United States.
Yes.
But the United States dumped them in favor of Saudi Arabia. Then the second one, they already have a problem with Syria. And don't forget that, not quite Syria, but Iran. Iran, they have walked out of the peace agreement. They are going to impose sanctions. Iran produces over 1 million barrels of oil per day.
Yes.
The moment you have taken that oil off the market, the only oil now you are left with in a big way is that of Saudi Arabia. If you do the same thing like what you have done to Iran, Saudi Arabia, first of all, you lose your ally because American interests are actually contracted or ceded to some powers in Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia is a proxy for some of the things they are doing, like in Yemen and in Syria and the rest. And so if you take away that oil, first of all, Saudi Arabia might decide to trade that oil in euros.
Yes.
Because the oil is traded in dollars. The moment you do that, the dollar will collapse. So this is the interest of the United States. United States is not going to act on this matter. What they are hoping for is simply to wear out our patience. And that's why they're sending envoy after envoy. You saw the Treasury Secretary sitting with this person, and perhaps the message was, time will heal this process, and it will be business as usual. And so, as they say, Middle East is in a crisis, because now Turkey is also exploiting this so that they can come up on top of the game, and they have their own interest. So we are in a mess in that place, and we don't have leadership of the United States as a guarantor of those values that they claimed they were leading, and so we are in a vacuum, and Europe is in a dilemma because they don't know what to do. And so here we now need new leadership to emerge.
Right. Let's also hear from Professor Noah Midamba.
Debarl, I went to school with a fellow who later, and he was a very good friend of mine, who later on became the vice commander of the Saudi's Air Force. During the war of Iraq War, my friend would rather spend more time off Florida Beach in a yacht, smoking expensive cigars, than be involved in that intensive war. And the fundamental questions that need to be raised, and I've been following Khashoggi for quite a long time in his writing. His writing is not any radical or, you know, attempting to overthrow the regime and all that kind of thing. He was associated with the regime. Yes. In fact, he was very closely linked to the regime leadership.
Yes.
Now, here's some fundamental questions. The war in Yemen Peninsula has gone really wrong. And they never follow the General Sutsu, Truman Doctrine, but Powell Doctrine in terms of war. And it's gone absolutely wrong. There is something unnerving in the house of Saud. And this young man may either be the catalyst to bring it all together, to scramble. literary scrum from what it is right now.
Right.
This country, this regime cannot fight Iran, it cannot fight Turkey, and we cannot fight or attempt in any way to fight Israel.
Thank you.
Because they have so many imported soldiers.
Right, thank you.
And therefore, the truth is going to come out in the who ordered the killing. Was it some fundamental? Was it this young crown prince? Or was it somebody else? The truth will eventually come out.
Right, on your screen you can see this particular picture. This, I think, is what the Washington Post is talking about, the body double, alluding to the video that pointing out that, yes, there was a very choreographed way that this particular murder was planned. Surveillance video recorded by Turkish law enforcement appears to confirm reports that Saudi agents used body double as part of an attempted cover-up after the killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi at the Saudi consulate. And it, of course, says the video obtained and broadcast by CNN on Monday purportedly shows a Saudi agent walking out of the consulate wearing Khashoggi's clothes. And you can see him on the other side. Khashoggi is walking to the consulate, and this guy is actually now the one who's walking away, as well as a spectacle of a fake beard. And you can see the difference, of course, the shining paint on Khashoggi, and of course he's got also hair as well. So what does it, who is Jamal Khashoggi? For them that don't really know who Jamal Khashoggi is, as we have that particular picture on screen, he's a famous journalist and a critic of Saudi Arabia's leadership, walked into the Saudi consulate in Istanbul on October the 2nd to obtain some documents. He has not been seen. He was born in Medina in 1958. His grandfather was the personal physician of King Abdul Aziz Al Saud, and the founder of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. His cousin Dodi Fayed, if you may remember, Dodi Fayed was dating Princess Diana when the two were killed in 1987. A long-time critic of the Saudi government, he relocated, I should say, to US in 2017 and began writing for the Washington Post. He founded a new political party this year, directly opposing the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. And on the afternoon of October the 2nd, he went inside the main entrance of Saudi Arabian consulate in Istanbul to obtain document proving he was divorced. He could then marry his fiancée, a Turkish citizen, who waited outside. After he did not come back out, she reported him missing. The Saudi government claims he left the consulate through a back entrance. Maybe our closing remarks on this as well. As far as maybe dissidents are concerned, people who do not agree with regimes, and then they exterminated the way Khashoggi was. Let's hear from Dr. Mustafa.
Yeah, Debarl, this crime and murder will play out in the Middle East geopolitics. Iran is going to take full advantage of that. We've seen Turkey, because of partly political and, of course, partly human rights reasons, really now are projecting itself as a speaker for the Muslim community. Saudi Arabia, in this case, mindful of time, Debarl, it's the crown, the king is and the crown prince. These are the custodians of the two holy mosques, Mecca and Medina. These are the holiest shrines in Islam. So symbolically and in Islamic symbology, meaning that they are the leaders of the Muslim community as they want it to be. Now they have desecrated this position and those two holy places of worship.
Okay, Warunga.
Yeah, I think this shows you first how ruthless talking, and they kill him. That shows you what kind of mentality the leadership of this young crown prince is going to be for that region. And just to finish, I don't think Mustafa respectively disagree. Turkey cannot be talking about human rights. It's one of the biggest offenders of human rights. I think what Turkey is doing is taking advantage of this situation.
That's right.
To perpetuate its leadership in the Muslim society. And it knows this is the right time. If we don't take leadership and completely destroy the House of Saud, they will never have another chance to take charge of the leadership of the Muslim community. Although they are not the custodians of the two mosques, but I think because of its military, economy, and the population, they can easily start leading the Muslim world in terms of what they have.
All right. Let's get our closing remarks. Finally, as we're finishing up, Erastus Mwenchak, maybe you could weigh in on that, and then we begin to get our closing remarks, beginning with the Dr. Mustafa.
Well, there is not much to add. I think it's been well just.
Right. Thank you. Your closing remarks?
Well, at the beginning, you had wanted us to comment on quite a number of issues, one of them on the appointment of Raila Odinga. First of all, to congratulate him, but also to pay tribute to His Excellency the President, because I know I wouldn't have been appointed without his endorsement. This appointment is important from two perspectives. One, he will be a special envoy of the Commission. That's why he's been appointed by the chairperson to mobilize, first of all, consensus on implementation of infrastructure projects in Africa. And the infrastructure is quite big, because when you talk of infrastructure, you're talking of air transport, road transport, rail, water, and the rest. And Africa has a portfolio of projects and many actors in that. Actors in the sense that you have regional economic communities, you have governments, you have international community. And in that context, just to allude to a commentary by one of your columnists here, Chahind, who has extensively written on that, but simply to disagree with him on one aspect, that not all infrastructure projects are being financed by China. And just to say that I happen to be sitting on a bridge, Belt and Road Initiative of China as one of the advisory members. And I see this culminating in us having a handshake with what is also happening in the continent. But most of the projects in Africa are financed not simply by China. In fact, if you look at the resources from there, you have resources from Europe, from America, and the rest.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Noami Damba, your closing remarks, briefly.
Debarl, Sir Winston Churchill said, and I'm paraphrasing, that many people can sit at the table of leadership, but only a few are true leaders. Corruption is the unnerving of our country, and we have to fight it by all means. And so I'm very pleased that we'll be able to pay whistleblowers to continue to reinforce the issue of fighting corruption.
Thank you. Right, Werunga.
I think with the same is good. 10% is very good. Kenyans will be rich very quickly. But the problem is...
They should be motivated.
The problem is, how is this thing going to be coordinated? That's where the problem is. People will be coming with these stories and others will be earning the money. So I think we need a structure where Kenyans know that if I report to this, then I'll get my 10%.
Yes.
And that, to me, Debarl, if it works well, that will be the beginning of the end of corruption in this country.
That's correct.
All right. Right. Thank you very much, our panelists this morning. I really appreciate this cogent discussion that we just had this morning. And of course, yes, there you have that particular motivation. If you want to become a whistleblower and you know where corruption is rife, where people are putting their clammy fingers, stealing from the public coffers, yes, you stand a chance to be rich. 10% from that particular, of course, pilfering will be yours if you report to the authorities as well. And I want to thank also our panelists and you with your rush of tweets. I'll just read one or two before we wind up. We have Steve J saying, The look by Mohammed Bonso's eye tells a lot. If their sorry is sincere, let the Wahhabis lift the Khashoggi's family's travel ban. That is what Steve J is saying here in regard to, of course, the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. Omar Bond saying, money talk, Saudi Arabia will get a tap on the wrist or a slap on the wrist at worst. And, or yeah, a tap is okay. And life will go on. At country level, business always triumphs over human rights worldwide. And this case, there is the added personal financial interest of course, you can see there Trump and his family. Also, we have John saying this is a butchery kingdom. We have also Agesa Milimo. Remember, we are hosting the beneficiaries and financiers of the war in our country. This is talking about South Sudan. We are not helping South Sudan. Why should they enjoy peace here and subject natives in South Sudan to war? Also, we have Samuel Orutwa saying terror activities involving terror groups all over the globe have been for decades with no sign of ending terror by Al-Shabaab in Somalia. Has history a dream of Kenya camping to end it is hard task, but is easier KDF sealing Kenya from terror? Those are some of your sentiments there. Let me just read one last one before we wind up. Also, we have Abdallah Mdamo saying Kenya is struggling with corruption and Al-Shabaab. We are in a worse off situation with these current leaders. This is your sentiments also from our social media as well. Right, just to say thank you so much for your valued company. And of course, don't go away. Living with S is up next.